In today's video, I wanted to continue my journey through BioShock's story. Last time, I was introduced to the world of Rapture, the city, the people, and the chaos. I was saved by a man named Atlas and targeted by another named Andrew Ryan. I've encountered little sisters, big daddies, splicers, security bots, turrets, etc. I've learned how valuable Adam is and the hardships of obtaining it. I got access to a variety of weapons as well as new genetic powers called plasmids. The story led me all the way to a place called the Arcadia. Andrew Ryan released a harmful gas which poisoned all the trees. After Dr. Julie Langford's death, it was revealed that something called the Lazarus Vector could revive the trees and save Rapture. This is where the story continues. After leaving Langford's office, Atlas suggests heading into the farmer's market in order to start looking for the ingredients. In terms of finding the ingredients for the Lazarus Vector, each one is acquired in a rather unique way. For example, the chlorophyll solution samples are found on Houdini splicers, so you'll need to take out at least 7 of those for that portion. The distilled waters are randomly placed around the farmer's market and the Arcadia. Then finally, the enzymes are mostly found in a specific area. Now, after receiving my gift from Dr. Tenenbaum for saving the little sisters, I've crossed over into the belief that maybe saving them really is the way to go. She gave me 200 more Atom, some supplies, and a new plasmid. This new plasmid might be up there as one of my favorites. It's called Hypnotize Big Daddy, and using it on one of them essentially makes it a follower. They're incredibly handy in a pinch, will tank for you, and will deal lots of damage. There are a few downsides though. The little sisters that they were accompanying disappear. It saps up an entire bar's worth of Eve, and you might just get motion sickness with the way they follow you. The first area I checked off was the one with the enzymes. This place was filled with hive boxes, and the mechanic here was pretty interesting. There were levers to release smoke in the air, which temporarily cleared out the bees. In those brief moments, I had to look over all of the boxes and find my 7 samples. However, while the smoke was out, splicers would walk on in and create a distraction. Thankfully, the Big Daddy was helping me out in this portion, but it was still a lot to handle at once, especially with the bees. In my opinion, it was probably the most difficult of the 3 ingredients to gather, as the other 2 were a lot more passive. The samples of distilled water were sporadically placed around the region. Honestly though, I was able to get my hands on a few samples through general exploration. However, the biggest jackpot was in Worley Winery. Here, there were more than 7 samples laying around, and snagging them was pretty simple. Of course, it had its fair share of splicers, but nothing too out of the ordinary. In between each goal, I tried my best to take on the Big Daddies in order to get to the Atom. With my new equipment, there were lots of ways to handle the fights. Obviously, I'm still learning the best combos and seeing what works best for my playstyle, but as of this moment, it was pretty much a guarantee that I'd die at least once during the battle. In terms of the little sisters and rescuing versus harvesting, I found myself going back and forth between the two, slowly building up to Tenenbaum's next care package, but also getting a good hit of Atom when I needed it. As for the final ingredient, chlorophyll solution, the Houdini splicers would just sort of show up randomly. When they did, I'd take them down and retrieve the samples. There were a handful of chemicals placed around the area, but I didn't notice them until it was all over. The 7th one actually took me quite a long time to find. I wasn't having much luck running into the right splicers, and as I mentioned before, didn't know that they were just out there in the wild. Finally though, after looking up and down the farmer's market and Arcadia, I stumbled onto the final sample for the Lazarus Vector.
Do you have all the components for the Lazarus Vector yet? If you do, best head to a crafting station. Then, head back to Langford's lab and put the whole witch's brew in the mister. That should clear this fog right up. From the sounds of that you invent, I'm guessing you're the proud papa of a brand new Lazarus Vector. Now drop the Vector into a gadget called Central Misting Control. Then we'll be cooking with gas.
Returning to Langford's quarters, I got pretty frustrated with all the turrets and security cameras on site. I went through a couple of health kits and Eve hypos just to destroy them. Little did I know though, for what lied ahead, breaking them was a big mistake. Fortunately, a Big Daddy entered the area and I had some form of common sense to not take it out. In Julie's office, I placed the Vector in the Central Misting Control and waited for word from Atlas.
It seems Julie's death didn't provide a clear enough lesson to you. Perhaps this will suffice.
Ryan's got your number. Spicer's out.
Of course, this was when I palmed my forehead. All of those turrets and security cameras. If only I had just run into the office before letting the impulsive thoughts take over. Like mentioned before though, the Big Daddy was my last saving grace. However, the hypnotized plasmid was very costly, so I knew my time with it was limited. Splicers carved their way through the nearby doors and came rushing in. Back towards the entrance of the offices, there was a switch which controlled all of the doors leading in and out. Flipping it, I was provided with a little more time before the wave of splicers came through, but nothing that could outright stop the invasion. Splicers of all kind came pouring in through the doors. Thuggish, leadheads, spiders, nitros, houdinis, things ended up getting really hairy. I ran out of consumables and ammunition halfway through the battle, but luckily there were a couple of vending machines in the area. The closest Vita chamber was also just outside of Langford's main office, so if anything, dying was like hitting the refresh button. Thankfully, the Big Daddy was still kicking around, so a quick hypnosis and it was back to even Stevens. Of course, in a heated battle like this one, health kits get used up fast and Eve shoots through your veins in a pinch. Thankfully, before things got really bad, Atlas said that the Lazarus Vector was all set for release. Rushing over to the central misting control, I deployed the serum and saved all life on Rapture.
Well done, lad. Take a deep breath and enjoy it. Then head over to Rolling Hills and get the bathysphere. Next stop is Ryan's house. It's time for blood.
Why are you so resistant to the traditional methods of separating a man from his soul? You're not CIA, are you? You belong to Atlas, the one roach I can't seem to exterminate. Don't worry. I just need time to find the proper poison.
Hopping in the bathysphere, it was on to the next chapter of the game. So far, Fort Frolic is without a doubt my favorite section of BioShock.
You're almost there. The sphere to Ryan is up on ahead. Ryan's handed the keys to Fort Frolic over to a guy named Sander Cohen. Cohen's an artist, says some. He's a Section 8, says I. I've seen all kinds of cutthroats, freaks, and hard cases in my life. But Cohen, he's a real lunatic. The guy's a full psychopath.
As Atlas's communication cuts out, it's not obvious at first, but his end was intentionally jammed by none other than Sander Cohen, my favorite antagonist of the series thus far.
That's better. Atlas Ryan. Atlas Ryan. Da 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 da. Time was, you could get something decent on the radio. The artist has a duty to seduce the ear and delight the spirit. So say goodbye to those two blowhards, and hello to an evening with Sander Cohen.
In my opinion, the game does a phenomenal job at shrouding Cohen in mystery and terror. You never quite know what his agenda is, nor does he make his intentions with Jack obvious. I think it's largely due to the fantastic voice acting by T. Ryder Smith.
No, I haven't seen a sign of real life down here in months. Let's see if you're just another Johnny-come-lately, or maybe something more delicious.
While I don't want to play every single dialogue piece of Sanders, it's really hard not to. With Atlas and Andrew Ryan, you pick up on their tone and expressions right away, which then translates into their overall personality. With Sander Cohen, the depraved, tortured artist, simply summarizing his dialogue doesn't do it justice.
Oh, I could smell the malt vinegar in this one. I've waited so long for something tasty to come to this little burg, but all that pass are yokels and rubes. Where are my manners? Come in! Come in! Sander Cohen awaits you at the Fleet Hall.
This portion of Fort Frolic acts as the central hub. Most of the main pathways to other areas connect through here, and you'll find yourself coming back to this section pretty often for the main storyline. Following Sanders' request, I made my way to the Fleet Hall and discovered what horrors he had in store for me.
Presto, presto! No, no!
I'm trying. Please.
Once again, young Fitzpatrick.
Oh, Cohen, you sick fuck, let me out of there!
Calm down now. Life, death. The burden of the artist is to capture. See young Fitzpatrick here on the stage. Use your camera. Take him as he is now, so I may remember him. Now you've got Fitzpatrick caught in his moment of glory. It seems you've got the eye of the shutterbug, little moth. Now, head to the atrium and place his photograph in my masterpiece, and so our collaboration commences.
His mission for Jack is quite entertaining, and is a big reason as to why Fort Frolic is my favorite section.
Do you see it? When I am dust, this is what they'll point to. My quad tick. My masterpiece. Yes, and there's Fitzpatrick, freed of his own kinks and defects. And here's the glorious music. This is just the moment of conception. Out in this place, there are 3 men, all former disciples of mine, all connected by a common thread: betrayal. Find them, little moth, and immortalize their mortality in my quad tick.
Essentially, Sander has the player take on 3 different mini-bosses. Each former disciple of his is located in a different region of Fort Frolic. Once you've defeated them, you're to take their picture and add to Cohen's twisted murder collage. To help you out with your task, Cohen gives you a crossbow, my favorite weapon in the game so far. A lot of favorites for me during this chapter. The crossbow shreds through enemies. It essentially acts as a one-shot takedown type of weapon. Bolts are pretty cheap to buy from the vending machines, and sometimes they can even be re-picked up. Of course, a big downside is that you have to be dead accurate. If enemies move at the wrong time, lunge in, or jump over things, there's a good chance you're missing your shot. Another negative is that the reload time is pretty lengthy, and there's no way to rapid fire. However, to me, its power far outweighs the cons, and it quickly became my main weapon.
The old grape finally sent someone. Son of a bitch left me to freeze. Oh, I've got a pose all picked out for you.
The first mini-boss I encountered was named Martin Finnegan. He played around with an ice mechanic, so Incinerate was exceptionally useful. After taking down a few frozen splicers, he revealed himself and the fight started. Now, each of Cohen's targets were maybe only a little stronger than the average splicer, so mini-boss might not be the right word. They had a little more health and dealt a bit more damage, but they weren't on the same level as, say, Steinman or that spider splicer in Neptune's Bounty. A bit of a side note from the main story, but at this point in the game, I felt as though I had more Adam than I knew what to do with. Now, that might come as a blasphemous statement, but it felt true enough. There were certain upgrades that I didn't want to bother with, mainly tonics and a couple of plasmids. After buying upgrades for my health, Eve, and tonic slots, I really didn't want much else. I was finding tonics around Rapture, and I enjoyed the plasmids that I was using. This was also why I wasn't in a rush to harvest the Little Sisters and felt like I could switch between the two. However, that's coming from the guy who dies during every big encounter, so maybe take that one with a grain of salt. During my search for the other targets, I ran across a weapon upgrade station. I had actually seen one of these in the previous area, but was too caught up in battle to use it. Given that these can only be used once, and they're free of charge, I'm thinking that I'll come to regret my decision later. Each weapon has 2 available upgrades. One is for overall damage increase, and the other is specific to the firearm. Shotguns have increased rates of fire, the revolver has increased clip size, etc. It was in and around this part 2 where the enemies were starting to get a little too tanky for some of my gear, so I knew I had to keep my eyes peeled for these stations. Sander's next target could be found in Rapture Records over in Poseidon Plaza. In my opinion, Finnegan was the most charismatic and interesting of the bunch. He had a whole cutscene surrounding him, while Cobb just gets some side dialogue. He's also pretty much just a nitro splicer, so his mechanic is blowing things up and setting the area ablaze. Unlike Finnegan, Cobb and the next target run away from Jack instead of facing him head on. They usually just run a circuit around Fort Frolic and Poseidon Plaza, gunning for a health station when their bars get low. After Cobb's photo gets added to the collage, Cohen's true nature starts to reveal itself.
3 or 4. What's that look? You don't like it, do you? I don't need to be judged by you, by anyone. Screw you! Screw all you fucking doubters! Here's what I say to all of you!
The insecure, psychotic artist has a bit of a freakout moment. He sends a wave of splicers at the player and you just have to hold off for a little bit. It isn't unlike anything you've handled before. Plus, it's mostly thuggish and spider splicers, so ranged combat will do the trick nicely. The main thing though is that the segment will do a number to your ammo, Eve, or whatever consumables you're working with.
I'm sorry for that outburst. You'll have to forgive an old fool his artistic temperament. The birth is so close now. The labor pains can blur the judgment and drive the passions of even the finest spirits.
The final target is a splicer named Rodriguez. He's located in Eve's garden. Something else I have to praise the game for is its attention to detail and lore. Through tapes, flashbacks, and dialogue, the world of pre-Civil War Rapture gets built up really nicely. For example, while searching for Rodriguez, Jack sees a ghostly vision of someone named Jasmine Jolene. You learn that this exotic dancer had a relationship with Andrew Ryan. After becoming pregnant with his child, she was enticed by an offer from Frank Fontaine, the dead crime boss, money in exchange for the fetus. After finding out about it, Jolene was brutally murdered by Ryan. Again, it's those little subplots and touches of detail that make this game so magical. All of these stories happening at once that help paint a clearer picture of Rapture. It was never a perfect city. It was never the utopia that Andrew Ryan wants us to think it was. Rapture was always mad, chaotic, and violent, but the addition of Adam let its true colors show. Like mentioned before, Rodriguez has a small role like Cobb and doesn't offer much in the way of dialogue. He's a glorified nitro splicer and has the player chase him all around the area until he's defeated. He does have a decent amount of health though, so he takes a while to take down. His offense and fighting mechanics are pretty poor. Because I focused him with the crossbow, it took me an embarrassingly long time to get that final hit in. Once his portrait was taken though, Sanders' murder collage was finally complete, and my end of the bargain was finished.
It is accomplished! Let me see it. My God, my God, my God, my God, my God. It's beautiful.
You'll find your path to Ryan is now clear. Tell him Sanders said hello. Oh, yes, you may avail yourself upon one of my lesser works as a token of our time together. If you had become my one and true disciple, you might have been worthy of seeing inside the box of my most private muse. But who knows if that man is yet even born. Now, go.
What happened to you? I've been trying to raise you for a dog's age. Never mind. Would you kindly leg it over to the spear and get on down to Hephaestus? It's time to settle up with Ryan.
To be honest, I was shocked that there wasn't a final boss fight with Cohen. I thought for sure his insecure rage was going to creep out again and it would have ended in a duel to the death. But the fact that I got rewarded again with another gift and I was free to leave without any violence was pretty bewildering. I suppose the game did just make the player take on 3 different mini-bosses, so why add a 4th? But still, pretty surprising, at least to me.
Now would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch? It's time to finish this.
I see Cohen's lost his touch. if you knew him when. Well, he used to believe in the work, in the struggle. And now, he rots in that everlasting, waiting for someone to come and tell him he's still got it.
As Fort Frolic closes out, it's on to the next chapter, Hephaestus. The atmosphere is quite different in this level compared to the previous ones. The rooms have a red glow to them. The color of the sea changed from a deep blue to a smoggy orange. The enemies are more beefed up, and it looks as though that the player is closer to Rapture's core with all the moving parts and machinery. It symbolizes the player's progress of getting closer to Andrew Ryan, closer to the devil himself and the hellscape that he's created.
A worm looks up and sees the face of God. But look around. It's a regular convention of worms in here. They all had mothers, fathers, people who loved them. They got married, fucked their wives. What makes you think you're any different? I haven't chosen the spot for you on the wall yet. Let me know if you have a preference.
After Andrew Ryan speaks to Jack, the player listens to a tape of someone named Anya Andersdotter. She explains that the only way to get to Ryan is by, quote, generating a sympathetic overload in harmonic core number 3. As we'll find out very soon, that essentially means placing an EMP at the source of the electricity and rendering Ryan's security useless. She also mentions that a good starting point for this is in heat loss monitoring, a little subsection of Hephaestus. I briefly mentioned this before, but given the circumstances of this level, it really seems like the game jacked up the number of enemies here. There were quite a few sections where I was battling against waves of splicers instead of the usual 1 or 2 per room. The theatrics and gimmicks were certainly turned up for this one. Throughout the journey in this region, Andrew Ryan insists on talking with you a lot. Most of what he says is meant to break your spirit and incite fear, likely a fear mechanism on his part as he knows that you're so close to cracking the code and meeting face to face. However, some of what he says starts to teeter away from threats and more towards hints at the overall story. After listening to another tape, this time from someone named Pablo Navarro, you learn that Anya Andersdotter was sent to a place called Kyber's Tool Shop. There, she was able to learn more about magnetic locks and the electrical mainframe for Rapture. Conveniently, the tool shop is in a section called the workshops. Who would have guessed that? Meandering through the space, I ended up in a small room, and inside, placed on a table, was the shell of an EMP. Along with that was a tape from this Kyber's.
The basic casing is ready. I've got 1 charge of nitroglycerin in my office. That will serve as the catalyst. Now I need 4 R34 lead shield wire stubs to pass the circuit. Then a half can of ionic gel, that's the pretty Betty of the mix. Should send the core into compensation mode, push power down the line and trigger the circuit breaker on Ryan's gate. Well, that's the theory. It'll either work like a charm, or blow up half of Rapture. Nothing ventured.
Through that, you're given a new multi-part goal, which is the main bulk of this level. The idea is very similar to the Lazarus Vector back in Arcadia. Collect the components, place them in the EMP, and watch the magic happen. For this one, the arrow does help you out, and Hephaestus is a lot smaller than Arcadia and the Farmer's Market combined, so that's a plus right there. For example, it leads you to the nitroglycerin, presumably because there's only 1 sample needed. The other 2 components have multiples, 2 quarter cans of ionic gel, and 4 R34 wire clusters. The first things I managed to find were the cans of gels. They were a little sparser than the distilled water from the Lazarus Vector, but probably the easiest of the bunch to locate. Then the next thing I did was follow the arrow over to the nitroglycerin. It was locked in a private office, and while I'm certain the code was probably somewhere in an audio tape, I completely missed it. So I just hacked the panel and got into the closed off space that way. Admittedly, up until now, I still had no clue how to deal with the electric wire traps. I assumed that Jack had to parkour past them and that there was no way of disabling them. Only after learning things the hard way did I realize that a simple electrobolt would do the trick. At the back of the office was a desk with some buttons. Pressing those, the nitroglycerin was free for the taking, and into the EMP it went. The final components were the R34 wire clusters. Those were actually pretty interesting to obtain, and I liked how it was a 2 birds 1 stone type of scenario. The main way of collecting those was through taking down Big Daddies. On their corpses were the wire clusters, and then once they were taken care of, it was a free hit of Adam from the Little Sisters. Again, I found myself alternating between harvesting and rescuing, simply because I didn't really have any goals for the Gatherer's Garden. However, my perspective on the whole dilemma was about to change.
Does it look like it's a real bomb? It better. You got to put it on the core, past geothermal control, and we'll see if these needle noses knew what the hell they were talking about.
Soon after, Jack is directed over to a subsection called the geothermal control. Given the layout of the room, it's pretty obvious that you're going to have to hold up in here for a bit. Atlas instructs you to, quote, redirect the magma flow using the redirect valve. Then, given what he says after, that Andrew Ryan will probably take action against you, the next part is made pretty clear. Using the wheel at the center of the room, the player slowly turns the pipe to a perpendicular position. Periodically, a splicer or two will run through the doors on either side of the room and interrupt the process. Luckily, stopping the release valve doesn't negate any of your progress, so that makes this section a whole lot easier. Once the magma flows into the water and clears the way down, Atlas chimes in, letting you know that you can now move on.
So far away from your family, from your friends, from everything you ever loved. But for some reason, you like it here. You feel something you can't quite put your finger on. Think about it for a second, and maybe the word will come to you. Nostalgia.
As you continue with your objective, Andrew Ryan's dialogue turns away from subtle plotline hints and more towards some serious reveals. Placing the EMP at the core, things get even more hectic down here in Hephaestus. The sounds are deafening, Ryan is screaming in your ear, the grounds are shaking, the security bots are running rampant, and the splicers are extra active. After a showdown outside of Ryan's office, the doors finally opened. It was on to the big bad boss himself.
Even in the Book of Lies, sometimes you find truth. There is indeed a season for all things. And now that I see you, flesh to flesh and blood to blood, I know I cannot raise my hand against you. But know this, you are my greatest disappointment. Does your master hear me? Atlas, you can kill me, but you will never have my city. My strength is not in steel and fire. That is what the parasites will never understand. A season for all things. A time to live and a time to die. A time to build and a time to destroy! Come now, my child. There is one final thing to discuss.
What? Ryan set the core to self-destruct. This is different than what you did. He's got a mind to take down the whole damn city. Get in there and whack the chunk before the whole joint blows!
Contrary to what Atlas says, you can indeed take your time in this section, looting the office, buying supplies, and having a look around. Although, the best content is waiting for you up ahead. Crawling further into Ryan's office, you stumble onto a giant board with photos of Andrew, Jasmine, Tenenbaum, Fontaine, and someone named Suchong. Connecting Ryan and Jasmine is an unnamed man. That man is Jack, their estranged son, the fetus that Jolene sold to Fontaine. Sprayed over the board and the pictures are the words, "Would you kindly?"
An assassin has overcome my final defense, and now he's come to murder me. In the end, what separates a man from a slave? Money? Power? No. A man chooses. A slave obeys. You think you have memories. A farm. A family. An airplane. A crash. And then this place. Was there really a family? Did that airplane crash? Or was it hijacked? Forced down. Forced down by something less than a man, something bred to sleepwalk through life until they are activated by a simple phrase spoken by their kindly master. Was a man sent to kill, or a slave? A man chooses. A slave obeys. Come in. Stop, would you kindly? Powerful phrase. Familiar phrase.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find it? Would you kindly find it? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Sit, would you kindly? Stand, would you kindly? Run! Stop! Turn. A man chooses. A slave obeys. Kill! A man chooses. A slave obeys. Obey!
Hurry now! Grab Ryan's genetic key! Now would you kindly put it in that goddamn machine?
I'm sure you can piece together what's going on here, but the final nail in the coffin is what comes after you override the self-destruct sequence.
Nice work, Bio. It's time to end this little masquerade. There ain't no Atlas, kid. Never was. Selling my line of work takes on a variety of aliases. Hell, once I was even a Chinaman for 6 months. But you've been a sport, so I guess I owe you a little honesty. The name's Frank Fontaine.
I gotta say, I had a lot of business partners in my life, but you, of course, the fact that you were genetically conditioned to bark like a cocker spaniel when I said, would you kindly, might have had something to do with it, but still. Now, as soon as that machine finishes processing the genetic key you just fished off Ryan, I'm gonna run Rapture tits to toes. You've been a pal, but you know what they say? Never mix business with friendship. Thanks for everything, kid. Don't forget to say hi to Ryan for me.
As everything begins to spiral, of all the people in Rapture to come and rescue Jack, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw a little sister come out of nowhere. Instantly, my heart sank as I thought about all the ones that I harvested just to get here.
Welcome back, child. Welcome to the city where you were born. You are angry at Fontaine, yes? Now you know the truth. You are his tool, brought back to Rapture to save him. You have committed many sins, but perhaps you can find some redemption. While you sleep, I undo some of Fontaine's mental conditioning. His control is no longer complete, but he can still pull some very unpleasant strings. We made your mind with many locks and keys. Fontaine has most of those keys, but not all. Suchong designed your mind, taught Fontaine to control you. You might find answers in Suchong's flat in Mercury Suites.
With that overload of information and twist after twist, we can finally calm down a bit to process everything that happened. I'll be honest, even though I never played the game, I've had it spoiled to me that Atlas ends up being the real enemy, so that part didn't come as much of a shock. I know it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. However, seeing the events unfold and the emotion from everyone involved was better than I could have ever hoped, so that's an A+ in my books. Worth mentioning too, I had no clue Atlas was Fontaine and that Andrew Ryan was Jack's dad, so that came as a complete shock to me. This is the point in BioShock where the objective obviously changes. It's no longer hunt down Andrew Ryan, it's now go after Atlas, aka Frank Fontaine. Before, I mentioned that my outlook with the little sisters was about to change. After having them save Jack's life, seeing them interact with one another in the safe house, and hearing them all call my character a monster, I was pretty heartbroken.
Stay away from him.
It had a greater impact on me than I thought it would have. This really helped to humanize the little demonic girls I've been seeing and completely turned me away from harvesting any others that I'd come across. Once again, a beautiful touch from the game.
And now you've got hooked up with Tenenbaum, huh, kid? She's a regular mother goose. Alright, fun's fun, kid, but now, go get stepped on by a big daddy. Would you kindly? Huh? I says, would you kindly go get stepped on by a big daddy? Seems like Mother Goose has been playing around in your egg salad. If you won't dance to that tune, I got others. Code Yellow. I just told your brain to tell your heart to stop beating. Not right off the bat, mind you. The heart's a stubborn muscle, but it ain't that stubborn.
Welcome to the next chapter of BioShock, Olympus Heights. Right now, the current goal is to figure out how you can free yourself from Fontaine's mind control. Even though the overall objective of BioShock has completely changed, Rapture is still the same. Splicers roam the streets looking for Adam. Big Daddies are still protecting the afflicted little sisters. Horrors and atrocities are still rampant in Rapture. A small side note, but Olympus Heights is where the game introduces a variant to the thuggish Splicer. These new ones are pulsing with electricity, and Electrobolt no longer has an effect on them. So, you're gonna have to find a new way to stun them. Also, the crossbow, my newfound favorite weapon, needed to deliver upwards of 3 hits to defeat certain enemies. Like mentioned before, NPCs were getting more and more difficult as the levels went on, and Olympus Heights truly felt like a skill check.
But peel back flim flam and a humbug, he's just another conman. And like all conmen, he worries he'll end up on the wrong side of grift. That's why he commissioned Lot 192, the antidote to the mental control plasmid. Fontaine said I better not tell anybody about the antidote, not even Tenenbaum. And Suchong is inclined to listen.
With the way forward a little clearer, the player soon stumbles on an audio tape from someone named Paparazzi. Or he's part of the paparazzi, it's a little hard to tell. Anyways, the man in the tape says that Dr. Tenenbaum and Fontaine used to be a couple. Whether that's true or not, if it was simply the pair working together on Jack's mind control isn't clarified. Regardless, Paparazzi gives you the code to the elevator in the center of Olympus Heights, 5744. Before heading there, the player continues to follow the arrow and ends up in Tenenbaum's former home. It was torn apart by Fontaine and picked over by splicers. The Lot 192 remedy has since been taken to Frank's penthouse, which is accessible via the locked lift.
Yes, the compound is taking hold. The effects of the mental suggestion are now gone, but there will certainly be side effects.
I found this next part of the mission really interesting. Due to the small dosage of the remedy, the player's plasmids are on a constant cycle. So every couple or so of minutes, Jack's abilities would change. What's more, they could be plasmids that you haven't even purchased or gotten a hold of yet. On top of that, some could be incredibly useful, like Electrobolt or Telekinesis, while others might be as simple as Security Bullseye or Target Dummy. Honestly, I pretty much avoided using plasmids during this time period. They're usually a supplement to my weapons anyways, so I didn't feel the effects of it that much. In terms of the level, accompanying Olympus Heights was Apollo Square, the farmer's market of this section. This was the space that held Dr. Suchung's laboratory. It took the usual run and gun style of gameplay to get there. I know I've said it in the last 3 sections, but at this point, it practically took my entire ammunition supply on any given gun to take down the splicers. The only upgrades I'd gotten thus far were increased damage to the revolver and increased durability for the crossbow. So all my other weapons weren't really pulling their weight anymore. Finally, after making it to the doctor's lab, I secured the second lot 192 remedy.
Now you are having freedom. Suchung's drugs should have no hold on you. Take the bathysphere to Point Prometheus. It is time for this matter to be settled.
From here, the Olympus Heights chapter comes to an end, and so does Fontaine's mind control over Jack. Your health bar has reset back to normal, and you can once again pick from your lineup of plasmids. The next location is called Point Prometheus, and from there, it's on to facing Frank Fontaine.
But laying all your chips on Mother Goose, it's not like you never been double-crossed before. You know what I'm saying? Hoof it to Point Prometheus. We'll discuss this like men. You, me, a submarine topside, and more at him than you can possibly imagine.